What's up, guys? Back again with another fun quiz video. And today we're going to be asking you some questions about ancient civilizations. How well do you know these long-lost societies? Are you a history buff, or will you be put to shame by your own ignorance? Well, let's find out. Let's go back in time and see how much you know. First question. Which ancient civilization built the pyramids? There are lots of pyramids all around the world, but the most famous ones are probably the ones in Egypt. But were they the first? Not quite. The first pyramids were actually built by which civilization? Mesoamerican, Greek, Roman, or Mesopotamian? If you said Mesoamerican, you are correct. The first pyramids were built by the Mesoamerican civilization in the 2nd century BCE. These pyramids, such as the one at Teotihuacan, were often stepped pyramids made from earth and rubble. The Egyptians would later come along and build their own pyramids a few centuries later, but they weren't the first. So why did you learn that in school? Whoever wrote your curriculum needs to be fired because that is not true. The Egyptians were not the first builders of pyramids. Question 2. What was Hammurabi's code? In Mesopotamia, there were many powerful empires over the years, including the Akkadian Empire, Babylonian Empire, Assyrian Empire, and finally the Neo-Babylonian Empire. The last two were ruled by Hammurabi and Nebuchadnezzar respectively. Question is, what did they do? Was it A. Create the world's first known system of writing? B. Create the world's first wheel? C. Create the world's first known codification of laws? Or D. Create the world's first democracy? If you picked C, then you're right. Hammurabi's code was created by the Neo-Babylonian Empire and was written in the 18th century BCE. It was one of the earliest systems of laws and is famous for its harsh punishments, such as an eye for an eye. Next question. Which ancient civilization was polytheistic? That is, they worshipped multiple gods. We know the Greeks were polytheistic, but so were many other civilizations throughout history. Which one of these was also polytheistic? Norse, Egyptian, Chinese, or Inca? If you chose Egyptian, then you are correct. Polytheism seems to have been widespread in the ancient world, but the Egyptians may have had it the worst. With hundreds of gods and goddesses to keep track of, it was a lot to handle, and each god had to be appeased through complex rituals. Otherwise, you just might end up dead. Question 4. Which ancient civilization invented the compass? This invention can be hard to attribute to just one civilization, but early compasses were invented by the ancient Chinese around 2000 BCE, or naturally magnetic rocks, to make simple compasses that could be used for navigation. This would greatly help them during their seafaring expeditions. But this wasn't the only important invention made by the Chinese. Question 5. What other important invention was invented by the Chinese? Paper, gunpowder, silk, or zero? If you chose all of the above, then you are right. The ancient Chinese were responsible for inventing all of these things. They invented paper around 100 CE, although there is some debate over whether or not it was the same material as modern paper. Gunpowder was invented accidentally while searching for an elixir of life, and its military applications were quickly realized. Silk was produced using silkworms, and the Chinese had a monopoly on silk production for centuries. Lastly, they invented the concept of zero and how to use it. This was hugely important for mathematics. Up until now, most people thought the next question would be easy. But oh, no. Which ancient civilization built the Colosseum? Oh wait, you don't need to think at all. It was obviously the Romans who built the Colosseum. Correct. But which Roman emperor opened the Colossus with a 100-day festival that featured animal hunts, mock naval battles and executions? If you said Titus, you're correct. The Colossus was opened in 80 CE by Titus. Next up, which civilization is credited with inventing the plough? The plough was an extremely important invention that allowed humans to cultivate land more efficiently. It led to increased food production and helped support larger populations. It was a major technological advancement in human history, and you'll never guess which civilization invented it. Was it the Hittites, the Indo-European civilization, the Bantu, or the Mesopotamians? If you said the Indo-European civilization, you'd be correct. The plough was invented somewhere in the Pontic-Caspian steppe around 4500 BCE. This would have been used by early farmers and would become a mainstay of agriculture for thousands of years. Now it's time for an art history question. Which ancient civilization built Stonehenge? Stonehenge is famous, but not many people know too much about it, like who built it and why. It's pretty mysterious, but one thing we do know is that it was built by the Neolithic people in Europe. So which Neolithic people built this monument? Celtic, Greek, Roman, or Iberian? If you said Celtic, you're right. Stonehenge was built by the Celts, and the construction began around 3000 BCE. It would be worked on for thousands of years after that. But it's unknown exactly why it was built. It was probably used for burials, but it may have also been a place of worship. Next up, which empire was Alexander the Great a part of? Alexander the Great was the king of Macedon, but he conquered large parts of the ancient world. Which empire was he a part of? Anatolian, Persian, Mesopotamian, or Greek? If you said Greek, you're correct. Alexander was technically the king of Macedon, but Macedon was considered a part of Greece. Therefore, he was Greek. Which civilization built Angkor Wat? Angkor Wat is one of the largest religious monuments ever built. It covers a vast area and was built between the 9th and 10th centuries CE. It's a testament to the Khmer civilization. But where was this built? Srivijaya, Persia, Champa, or Jammu? If you said Khmer, you're correct. Khmer is located in modern Cambodia. Next, who was Gilgamesh? According to an epic poem from ancient Mesopotamia, the world was once ruled by gods, but over time they decided to create humans to serve as lesser rulers. One of these rulers was Gilgamesh, the semi-divine king of Uruk. He went on adventures, defeated enemies, and performed great deeds, but he's most remembered for his friendship with a man named Enki. Together, they went on quests, fought monsters, and learned important lessons. But eventually, Enkidu died, and this caused Gilgamesh to go on a quest to find the secret of immortality. In the end, he failed to find immortality, but he did find something better: acceptance of his mortality. His story is one of the earliest pieces of literature ever written down, and has influenced stories throughout history. How did the Aztec measure time? Like many ancient cultures, the Aztecs didn't have a watch to tell the time, but they still managed to tell the time pretty accurately. How did they do it? Sun. They used the position of the sun to tell the time, and they used a device called a Tepentitler to do so. Tepentitler is Nahuatl for Venus Observatory. And even though it's called an observatory, it's really just a temple that served a dual purpose. It's a temple to the gods, but it also served as a solar calendar. Priests would observe the movement of the sun and use it to determine the time. Lastly, which ancient civilization was home to the Oracle of Delphi? The Oracle of Delphi was a person who delivered supposedly divine messages about the future. She was considered to be the greatest of the oracles, and she was revered throughout the ancient world. But where was she located? Was she Greek, Persian, Mesopotamian, or Egyptian? If you said Greek, you're correct. The Oracle of Delphi was located in the city of Delphi, and she was considered to be the greatest of the oracles. So how many did you get right? If you got 8 or 9 right, you win the prize for being a history buff. You must spend all of your free time reading about ancient civilizations. Well done. If you got 5 or 6 right, you win the participation trophy. You obviously know more than the average person, but you definitely have some learning to do if you want to be considered a history buff. If you got less than 5 right, then you should probably stick to stuff, you know, like modern history. Don't worry, everyone starts somewhere. Thanks so much for watching. I've been your host, and I'll see you next time for more facts and trivia.